Liz Truss was out in force today, launching the new lobbying group PopCon. It is aiming straight at the heart of large and small C Conservatives who think the Tory party has abandoned any crumb of real Conservative policy. Despite her polling as the least popular political figure in the UK, her event attracted big names such as former UKIP leader Nigel Farage. Here's what he had to say about the fate of the Tory party to our own TalkTV chief political correspondent Peter Cardwell.
They're going to lose the next election. Maybe they reform and change afterwards, or maybe, rather like Canada 30 years ago, maybe we're at one of those moments where they simply need to be replaced. This is way too late. The sense of betrayal that millions of voters feel, the optimism of that 2019 manifesto, the feeling that not only did they not deliver it, but they never actually believed in it when they put it to the public. No, it can't be turned around.
That's fairly definitive from Nigel Farage. I don't think he was actually there supporting them, he was just there observing them. But joining me now is co-founder of Deltapoll, Joe Twyman. Joe, very good evening to you. Welcome to the Independent Republican Mike Graham. I mean, Nigel Farage is right, isn't he? I mean, people have looked at this announcement and looked at the sort of suggestions that they're making as policy, that it's all lifted straight from the Reform Party's manifesto.
Well, good evening, Mike. It certainly looks like I guess, a nice tribute act for reform and perhaps other populist parties. But ultimately, this is another breakaway faction within the governing party, whether it's the New Conservatives, the National Conservatisms, the Conservatives for Britain. All these different groups have sprung up over the last few months. All of them are essentially trying for the same thing. And that's not about the coming election. It's about positioning themselves for the future. Once the election has taken place, and they are all assuming that the Conservatives will lose, they want their message across and they want to be an important part of that future for the Conservative Party. The difficulty, of course, for all of them is that many of them have competing priorities, and they may find it very difficult to all have a clear and loud voice in the future of that party.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot more infighting still to come.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the two interesting stories for me, which I'm going to talk to my panel about, who are here with me as well, is one, how high Reform are now sort of polling, 14%, we believe, in quite a few polls that are coming out. Certainly bigger than the Lib Dems, are not very far behind the Tories at all. But also this Labour vote, which is sort of collapsing in Muslim communities because of Keir Starmer's positioning on the ceasefire in Gaza.
Well, I think that to take the latter point, there's not a lot of data, and certainly a great absence of really reliable data of the Muslim community's voting intentions at any stage, but particularly in recent weeks in light of Gaza. I think the Rochdale by-election will offer an indication of where things might go. But I think come the election, the concerns of the Muslim community are very similar to the concerns of the rest of this country. Their top priority is almost certainly likely to be the cost of living, the NHS and the economy generally. And while Gaza and the situation there will play a more important role, I think it's unlikely to be a general election the deciding factor. And it's not as if any of the other parties on offer have a position that's more closely aligned with some people within the Muslim community. So I think that is perhaps a misnomer, and something that they don't need to worry about so much if you're Labour. I think Reform will have an interesting week next week with the two by-elections that are coming up. And the question there is, can they translate what has been a growing level of support in opinion polls over the last few months? Can they translate that to support in by-elections? Because up until now, they really haven't made much of a substantial breakthrough. And though it could be argued that in some cases they may take a few votes off the Conservatives, I think that's unlikely to make the difference between a large Labour landslide, for instance, and a moderate Labour victory. It's going to be far more complicated than that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be. Joe, thanks very much indeed. Joe Twyman there.